Have you ever felt that little nod of anxiety when it comes to defending your faith? You know, that feeling like you have to win some big debate you're just not prepared for? Well, in this explainer, we're going to look at a completely different way to think about it, one that's a whole lot less about arguing and way more about worship.
For so many of us, the phrase defending the faith just conjures up images of conflict, right? Of debates and intellectual showdowns.
But what if we've been looking at this whole thing wrong? Seriously, what if it was really an act of adoration? Because that one little shift in perspective, well, it can change absolutely everything about how we share what we believe.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we've got to start with what the word apologetics even means. Because honestly, the way we use it today can be kind of misleading. You hear apologetics, you think apology. But it's not about saying, I'm sorry, not even close. It comes from the Greek word apologia, which means to give a reasoned defense. Think about a lawyer in a courtroom. They're not there to win a fight. They're there to systematically present the evidence for what's true.
And that's the key right there. The goal is never about conflict. It's always about clarity. We're not trying to beat an opponent into submission. We're trying to make the truth clear, and ultimately, to introduce people to Christ.
So if we take away the whole idea of it being an argument, what are we left with? Well, this gets us to the absolute heart of this entire explainer. This is the game changer. It's not a technique for debating. It's a posture. It's all about how we position our hearts, our minds, everything in relation to God and to the person we're talking to. And this idea of whole life submission is just captured so beautifully right here. When we defend our faith as an act of worship, we're doing exactly this. We're feeding our minds with His truth. We're opening our hearts with His love. It literally becomes total life worship. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds like a lot of pressure. I mean, how can anyone do this perfectly? Well, the good news is, you're not supposed to do it on your own. The Bible promises us a divine partner in all of this. Right before Jesus ascended, He made it crystal clear that the power to be a witness, it doesn't come from our own cleverness. It comes from the Holy Spirit. And just look at the difference here. When we try to do it all on our own, with just our intellect, we feel all that pressure to perform, to win. But when we're led by the Spirit, it becomes a divine partnership. And we shift from a place of fear to a place of boldness and love, trusting that God is the one who actually persuades hearts. The Spirit works in these four incredible ways. He gives you courage. He guides you, setting up what you could call divine appointments, like with Philip and the Ethiopian. He goes ahead of you, preparing people's hearts, and He works in you, transforming your character, which becomes the most powerful testimony you have. So how do we actually do this in the real world? It all comes together in a really simple three-part framework that honestly anyone can use. It really boils down to just these three things: pray, engage, and study. This isn't some complex formula. It's more like a rhythm that makes this whole idea of apologetics practical and accessible for everybody. So, step one, everything has to start with prayer. It's the step we so often just rush right past, but it's absolutely crucial. Prayer gets our hearts in line with God's purpose, and it reminds us that we're completely dependent on His wisdom, not our own. Now, when it's time to actually engage, the Bible gives us a super specific command for our attitude. Notice what it says. It doesn't say with cleverness and force. No, it says with gentleness and reverence. Our demeanor, our tone, that's part of the defense. It reflects the character of the God we're representing. And finally, we study. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go get a seminary degree. It just means being anchored in the Scriptures. Really knowing what you believe and why you believe it is the foundation for speaking with both love and confidence. You know, maybe the most radical thing that comes out of this whole worship-focused approach is how it completely changes our view of people who have doubts.
The command is not to crush those who doubt or win against those who doubt. It's to have mercy. Instead of seeing doubters as our opponents to be defeated, we're called to see them as people who just need some compassion.
I mean, just look at Jesus' own example. John the Baptist, a titan of the faith, had serious doubts while he was stuck in prison. And did Jesus scold him? Not at all. He met John's wavering with gentle, merciful evidence. He knew that suffering and being alone can shake even the strongest faith. And then you've got Thomas. His doubt was a bit more skeptical, maybe even defiant. Jesus' response was different, but it was just as merciful. He gave Thomas space. He gave him time, 8 whole days before showing up and meeting him right where he was, patiently giving him the proof he needed. So after we've reframed our mindset, after we've looked at our methods, what's the actual goal here? Where is all of this supposed to be heading?
And this brings us right back to the most important truth of all. Brilliant intellectual arguments have never saved a single soul. Only God can do that. Our role is so much simpler and, honestly, so much more profound. Just be faithful witnesses, clear away the clutter and the misunderstanding, and gently point people toward Jesus.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. When you start seeing every one of these conversations as an act of worship, how does that change the way you engage? It shifts us away from the pressure to perform, from the pride of winning, and moves us into a posture of humble, faithful, and loving service. It turns every conversation into a chance to honor God.